Hi, welcome back. Today is the only day that I have 100% to myself this week, and I am honored to spend it with you. Today, I'm just gonna get ready to do nothing, really. So I'm just gonna play with makeup and talk to you about how this last semester went. As many of you know, I'm 26, but I am living in the freshman-sophomore dorms. And that's been interesting. So kind of like just a quick recap, I took a medical leave of absence in my senior year because I was having a lot of issues. And so then I was gone for like 5 years, had a lot of drama happen in that time. And then I came back this year, and since I'm not local to Chicago and I didn't want to like rent an apartment for a year and have to pay like rent from my savings, and then also I didn't want to have to move into an on-campus apartment where I would have to like furnish an apartment for, you know, 2 semesters. I just opted for the dorm life, which was interesting. So my on-campus experience, living with a lot of much younger students, has actually been pretty okay. Like, living on campus was, or is, I'm still here in my dorm room. I'm spending winter break here just because I wanted solitude and peace to be able to reset my mind. Living in a dorm room has not been that bad at all. Actually, because I had spent 8 months living with my parents to save money to go back to school, I actually was, my dorm room is actually bigger than my room in my parents' house, so I feel like I have a lot more space. And communal living in general, like sharing a bathroom and just like sharing a laundry room, I don't know, for me it hasn't been that big of a deal. I do laundry in the morning because all of the other college students do their laundry at night, so yeah, I like doing it in the morning. And then I'm putting on sunscreen, by the way, so I'm gonna look ghostly white right now. I've just learned how to kind of navigate around other people's schedules, and so it wasn't really that big of an adjustment for me. I will say that like communal living in general, like bathrooms, kitchen, laundry, everything's gonna be dirty, and you just have to know that going in. School has like a pretty good like cleaning schedule for like people coming through and cleaning, so it never gets like super bad, but there's been some plumbing issues in this hall, which has been the only thing that I would say people probably would not be comfortable with is that it's like really loud. Like the girls on my floor are really loud, but that's what I wanted in a dorm experience. Like that's what I wanted to live in, because I've had really negative experiences living on campus in like housing that all of the students there are like super quiet, and so it's really easy to feel isolated, and it's easy to feel like you're just alone in a dorm room and like there's no other living beings on this planet. So I wanted to feel like I wasn't isolated and that there were people and there was life around me. So yeah, the fact that it's loud in this dorm is actually like something that I was aiming for in a way. So that brings me to my social life on campus, which is a little bit, it went so much better than I expected. I didn't expect to have any friends. I kind of just expected to be alone in my dorm room a lot. But I had like mentally prepared for that going in, so I wasn't like sad about it. I just had kind of resigned myself to be like, okay, I'm not gonna have a social life or anything. But then within like a week of being on campus, well, like the first week was a little bit lonely, and so I ended up calling all of the people that I had anticipated being on my, you know, on my support system list. So every night I would talk to someone, I would call someone and catch up with them. So that was good. But then within the first week or two, I got a job, and that filled up my schedule tremendously. And then I just started doing something, like some things around the dorm that kind of opened me up to talking to more people. It's like, just because we're not in the same age group and maybe we don't have the same mindset on life doesn't mean that we can't, you know, have some sort of community. So like I would keep my door open so that anybody walking past could like see my room set up. And you know, that's pretty much the easiest way to meet people, is like people walking past and saying hi, especially because it's a freshman and sophomore dorm. So everyone is kind of like, oh, let's make friends. Let's not be alone. Let's have a good college experience. So I kept my door open. And then I would also like study in the lobby. And I never have been a library studier anyway. Like I hated studying in the library. It was too quiet and too isolating. I think the general theme is like, I don't like isolation. And I love being alone, but I like knowing that being alone was my choice and not just that I'm like stuck being isolated. So, so I study in the dorm like lobby, and there's a lot of people coming through making ramen noodles, and there's a lot of craziness happening. I should also mention that my dorm building is like all guys except for half of one floor, and I'm on that floor obviously with the girls. So there are a lot of guys, which I think guys are a lot less cliquey and a lot more outgoing, especially at like 18, 19, like probably because they're gonna ask you for something. They're gonna ask you if you have, you know, Kleenex, or if you have cough drops or milk. Literally, I'm thinking of one person who asked me for like so many things. So yeah, freshman guys are generally very dependent. but that's how you meet people. And then eventually, like, I started eating with people in the cafeteria. Like, at first I was eating alone, which I was fine with. But then the more I met people, it's like, oh, are you going to lunch? Let's go to lunch together. So, yeah, and cafeteria, that was also a new experience. Not a new experience. That was like I haven't eaten in the cafeteria since my freshman year. Like regularly, I was in the cafeteria for like every single meal back when I was 18. So now being back in the cafeteria and remembering how subpar the food is. But you know what? I'm not picky, and it was fine. And the cafeteria is probably the best place to really socialize with people anyway. By the way, I'm using this Too Faced Christmas coffee palette, which I hate, but I'm trying to make it work because I spent like $29 on it or $27 on it, and I am not going to not use this palette because it's poor quality. Anyway, so, and then finally, one of my closest friends that I met this semester, who is now gone, so it was just a one semester kind of fling of a friendship, but it was, we got really close, and we'll stay in touch obviously, is my friend from Spain, Eugenia. We met in class, and it was a weird class where we talked about death a lot, and it was really a bummer of a class. And we also did yoga at the first part of the class. It's called Zen and Archery. So we would like do, well, and it was archery, but the archery range was closed due to COVID. So we would just do yoga for the first hour of the class, and then we would talk about Zen and eliminating the fear of death and all that. So in the yoga portion of the class, I finally like had an interaction with her where I was like, oh, I like your sweater or something. And so we did yoga next to each other and kind of had a little bit of rapport that way. But then the discussion portion of the class started, and the discussion was about a topic that was like a real super bummer. And so Eugenia just like left class before the class had even begun, and I stayed in the class for like 5 minutes, and I had to excuse myself because I was sobbing. It was a bummer of a class. So I'm walking back to my dorm sobbing, and she's out there like smoking, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm not okay." So, and then from there we just like went on a walk. She said that she was like feeling tired or like a little bit depressed, and I'm like, "You need vitamin D." So we went to Target and bought her vitamin D supplements. And for the remainder of the semester, we were together like every day. Anytime I wasn't working, anytime we weren't in class, like we were hanging out together. So it was really fun. And yeah, I got to practice some of my Spanish, although Spain Spanish is very much different than Latin American Spanish. So that was a trip. But yeah, so that's kind of the social situation. I have 2 really close friends. One of them is now no longer in the school, but then my other friend Kathleen will be coming back after winter break, and we'll just hang out together still. So it's fun. And then speaking of classes, I guess I had 5 classes this semester, and it was a very interesting semester. So my classes this semester were pretty good overall. I did end up filing 2 grievances against my professors. One of them was my chemistry professor. It was my last gen ed class that I needed to take, was a chemistry class. And it was so bad. She would like show up late to class every single class. She was never prepared, so half of the class she was just outside of the class trying to print stuff, and the other parts of the class, like she'd hand us worksheets, and then like nobody knew what to do on the worksheets, and it was a mess. It was a mess. And then we'd waste 4 hours, because it was like a once a week 4-hour class. We would waste that 4 hours doing nothing, and then she'd assign like 6 hours worth of homework for the week, so that we would do some learning at some point. And it was like, it was so bad. And there were a couple of times where she just like didn't send an email letting us know that she wasn't going to be in class, and she just didn't show up until we like reached out. And then eventually she was like, "Oh, sorry, I had some issues with such and such," which it's like, I get it, you know, life happens, certain situations come up, but really? Not even an email? Come on. Anyway, so I filed a grievance against her after the class had ended, because it was 8 weeks out, and I was like, okay, well, that was a waste of my money. It was a disservice to my education and a waste of my time. Also, I wasn't really like, I was getting a fine grade. I got like an 87% or something like that. It was like, and she didn't grade anything on time, so I was getting 100% in the class until like the last week, where my grade dropped finally, because she put in some of my grades. So then it dropped to an 87, and I was like, all right, you know, whatever. I don't really care about my grades. I know that in the professional world, like, grades don't really matter that much in terms of like the field that I want to go into. Like, if I were like a nursing student or something, it would matter, but like communications, please, come on. So I wasn't really caring about my chemistry grade. But then after I filed the grievance, within 24 hours, I woke up the next morning after filing the grievance, and I had received 9 email notifications at 4:30 in the morning that my professor had changed my grade on a lot of my assignments. So there were 9 assignments that she regraded and dropped me down to a 75%. And she put in my final grade that I got a C+. And so after that grievance, I wrote back to the chair of the chemistry department, and I was like, So my grade just dropped, and I have every reason to believe that this is retaliation, because there's no reason why I shouldn't believe that at 4:30 in the morning, this professor is dropping my grade, like regrading assignments so that I get a lower grade. I am not going to hesitate to escalate this. And so if there's no response, I'm going to escalate this further. I messaged my group chat in the, I don't know, in the class. I had a group chat with other like students. And so I messaged them saying like, did anybody else have their grades changed? Blah, blah. And no, I was the only student that had happened to. And so I messaged them, I'm like, I'm about to put on my Karen and demand to speak to all the managers. And one of the kids was like, he's like, no, please don't. Like, she has her own agenda. Like, this will not end well for you. And I think that's honestly the difference between, like, I think that's a difference in age, because I had some pretty poor experiences with professors in the past, and I didn't say anything about it. Like, I had never filed grievances. I had never like demanded to speak to anybody. Actually, there was one grievance that I did file, because it was the class that was the one that like broke me mentally, because they played a video without a trigger warning, and it was like, that was not okay. As a younger student, I would have just kind of accepted my fate and been like, oh my God, this is just so unfair. But listen, I have spent years in the workforce. Number one, I know how to keep a job, and I know how to show up on time, and I know how to call in sick if I'm not gonna be there. So that's number one. I know how to do the bare minimum to keep my employment. But number two, I've spent years trying to come back to the school, or at least years trying to recover from crap that happened at this school. And I spent 8 months living with my parents in my childhood bedroom to save money to come back to this school. So I know the value of $1, and I know that for 2 credit hours, like that's $1,000 I can't get back. Those are 4 hours a week that I can't get back. And I did the work to get a good grade in that class, and I got a poor grade. She graded me zeros, like 0% on assignments that I didn't do, because the entire class didn't do those assignments because the professor didn't show up that day. So nobody did that assignment because we didn't have class, and yet she graded me a 0% on those assignments. Anyway, so I demanded to speak to the chair of the department and told her the situation. She filled out a grade change form, and she got it signed by the dean, and I got my grade boosted back up from a C+ to an A, as I should have an A. Anyway, so that was that class. That was a train wreck. And then the next class that I had was media literacy, and the last video that I posted was my final assignment for that class. I really liked that class. It was very informative. It was probably the most informative communications class that I've taken at this school, which, being in my senior year, that's a little bit concerning, but it was a really good class. Critical reading, writing, and analysis was also a little bit of a shit show, just because the professor was never organized, didn't have any class materials. There was one week where we met for 30 minutes and we were just, it could have been an email about the future assignments. Like, why are we meeting? It's a night class. It's supposed to last for 3 hours, and she had 30 minutes of nothing to tell us, and then she just dismissed us. So it was like, well, this is a waste of time. So basically, I didn't really learn anything in that class, but I wrote a lot of papers. And so, you know, that was one of those things where it's like, okay, so I just have to do a lot of work in order to get a piece of paper so that I can prove that I have a degree, but I actually haven't learned anything. That's how I feel about that class, and sometimes my college experience in general, but that was a class where I was like, okay, I'm not getting my money's worth at all. Then I had this class called Zen and Archery, which is so funny because it's a core class. So I guess that means like it's part of the core curriculum at this school. It's a private Christian school, so you know, you got to go through like certain things. I think my first year core class was history of the Holocaust. So Zen and archery, it's, I don't know, what is it relevant to? Absolutely nothing, but whatever. So yeah, the archery range was closed, so we did yoga at the first part of the class, and then we would talk about the fear of death and grief, and we just talked about death a lot every week, and it was a bummer, but it was really, it caused me to reflect on a lot of things, and I thought that it was a good class overall. And I liked my professor, and my professor liked me. I'm the teacher's pet in a lot of classes. I'm just so likable. Anyway, so that was that class. And then my last class was hip hop theology, which again, what even is that class? But it was my topics course for communications. So it was just supposed to be like a class that we talked about a topic and somehow tied in communications. I don't know how that's relevant to the curriculum, but it was a really good class. I did like that class. It was with the same professor as my media literacy class, and I just really like that professor. He knows how to engage the students well, and like actually make the course interesting while having pretty high academic standards. So even though it was like, it's a pain in the ass to do all these assignments, but I also know that I'm getting an education, and that for me is comforting. So, so yeah, but hip hop theology was basically talking about how God relates to, or how hip hop lyrics relate to God and the theology within hip hop, basically. It was interesting because I think I've had a lot of questions about my own faith and a lot of frustrations with the church in general, like Western evangelical Christian church, I guess. I've had a lot of frustrations, and that class really addressed a lot of that, a lot of hypocrisy and injustice and forms of oppression. And so it was a really good course, and it was kind of healing in a way to take that course and have to reflect on some of those things. There's a song called Dear God by Dax that I did a presentation on, and honestly, if you are interested in that at all, just like look up that song. And that basically was like such an honest and real and unfiltered form of asking the deeper questions of religion that a lot of Christians specifically, and a lot of like church people specifically, avoid, because there's no happy answer. Anyway, whatever. So that class was really good. Overall, my classes are really good. I got good grades. Anyway, next semester I am taking a lot of elective courses because I've already finished the majority of my major courses, and I'm just gonna be focused on finding my next step after graduation, so that'll be interesting. But yeah, that was basically my college experience for the last semester. Okay, so I talked a really long time while trying to do my makeup, and if you've been on this channel before, you know I'm not a really good multitasker, so I'm just gonna finish my makeup off camera and I'll be back with you. Okay, so this is the finished look. I finished it with Pillow Talk 2 Medium from Charlotte Tilbury. I just used it on my lips and cheeks. I kind of like my eye look today. It's like, it's meh, it's average, it's okay. But I think the Christmas Coffee, I think the reason why I don't like this palette is because it has this green, which is like, what does that fit with? It fits with nothing. All of these colors fit well together, and some of them are actually like dangerously similar, but like they all fit well together. But this green, why? Just to make it Christmassy? What does green have to do with Christmas coffee? Nothing. Anyway, so that's my frustration with the palette. Also the eyeshadow, like the quality of the eyeshadow, the formula of the eyeshadow is not that great. So Too Faced, do better. Anyway, this is the finished look, and that was my semester. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. I know that I had talked to family members and friends saying like, you know, worst case scenario, this is how it would be. Best case scenario, this is how it would be. And honestly, it went best case scenario pretty much down to the T. The only thing that was a bummer, and I say bummer and it's more than a bummer, but there was an incident that happened when my friends and I were going downtown, and we were in a train station, and there was an incident that happened. And I'm not gonna go into the details of that incident, but it brought up a lot of memories and a lot of past trauma, and it kind of changed the tune for my mental health for like the second half of the semester. And so that really did affect my ability to concentrate in classes and do my assignments and stuff, because it was it wasn't good. So I went back to therapy. So I'm taking like the free counseling from the school, and then I'm also trying to get back into therapy. Again, like I said in my last video, I'm not gonna try to talk about my mental health very much, but there's certain things that I had to really focus on with my mental health this semester simply because of that one incident. And so yeah, but that's why I'm staying also in the dorm, is because I was not really, there was a portion of the semester that I was not in a good headspace. And so now that classes are out and everyone is away, I wanted to reestablish my mental health in this space so that I wouldn't go back home to stay with my parents and then come back and immediately feel like I'm putting myself back into that headspace. So I wanted to reestablish myself and get back into my groove here so that I could resume with next semester with a better mindset. So that is my kind of tactic. If you have any questions, or if you're a college student and you have any advice or any questions that I could potentially answer, you know, leave that all in the comments. We love to hear it. Yeah, I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you whenever I see you with whatever I want to talk about. Okay, bye.